My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Now, believe it or not, but I have never owned or handled a Seiko turtle, so at long last I have one for review. And not just any turtle, but a king turtle, which uses a sapphire crystal and a ceramic bezel. However, before we get to that review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. For price and availability, at the time of this recording, this watch is available from a number of retailers for right around $450. The case is 45mm in diameter, it's 47.5mm lug to lug, 13mm thick, and then it has a 22mm lug width opening. Now, it weighs 129 grams on this stock strap. So this is one of the legendary cushion cases from Seiko that traces its lineage all the way back to the 6105. Despite being 45mm in diameter, the short lug to lug makes this watch incredibly wearable even on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Now, the case finishing is simple with brushing on top and high polish on the sides. The sides of the case slope in, which is part of the reason this watch is incredibly comfortable to wear. The 4 o'clock crown is tucked into the case. The lugs are also pierced for easy strap changes. The strap flares out to 24mm before tapering down to 19mm. The tail of the strap is adorned with the Seiko wave, which is a really fun detail. The backing is textured, and this one is a nice green color to complement the dial. The hardware is robust, signed, and uses a brush finish with high polish facets. The strap is quite long, but it just works on my wrist. If your wrist is smaller than 6 3/4 inches, you might have to trim the tail a bit. The strap is super comfortable, and I think this watch looks better on a strap than a bracelet. The screw-down case back helps provide 200 meters of water resistance, and this is an ISO certified diver. The classic Seiko wave can be found along with information about the watch, crystal, and movement. Speaking of that movement, this watch is powered by the 4R36. This is a hacking, hand-winding, 21,600 vibration per hour movement with a power reserve of 42 hours and a stated accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds a day, although I usually find that they run closer to plus or minus 10 seconds a day. It also features a quick set day and date. This one is running about +2 to +4 seconds a day in the dial up position, and then between -3 and -6 seconds a day with the crown up. The 7mm screw-down crown is unsigned. The knurling on the crown doesn't match the knurling on the bezel, which may or may not bother you, but it's a detail I can't help but notice. The threading and unthreading action is surprisingly smooth, but I did buy this used, so it is possible it's just broken in nicely over time, which I find Seiko crowns tend to do. Despite being sunken into the case, the crown is a great size and it's easy to operate the watch with. One of the upgrades in the King line is the use of a sapphire crystal. This one is flat and sits lower than the bezel insert. It uses the Super Cyclops, referred to as a candy bar, to magnify both the day and the date. The magnification is just okay, which really puts me on the fence on this one. I don't mind a Cyclops if the magnification is strong, otherwise I don't think they should be used. These also tend to not be perfectly aligned, which is just another small QC issue Seiko continues to suffer from. The 120-click unidirectional bezel has a ton of super grippy surface area. The knurling is similar to the pattern on the dial, which is neat, and the top edge is highly polished, which adds a layer of visual interest. I think this is the easiest bezel to grip I have ever experienced. The action is that mix of tactile and mushy that is common across Seiko dive bezels. This one lines up, but your mileage may vary. Now, this insert is ceramic, and it's on the shiny side, but it isn't distracting. This watch has a green chapter ring that closely matches the dial. The hours are marked with large dashes, with thinner dashes for each of the minutes. Now, this watch has been nicknamed the Grenade, and I can see why. There are large 3-dimensional squares that are really nicely executed. The dial is also that dark matte green. The indices are classic Seiko style, using a combination of circles and teardrops. These are applied and edged in a matte finish. This really eliminates the flash that applied indices sometimes add, and I think was a great choice for this watch. The day-date window has a nice facet around the edge, and then we have Seiko applied at 12 with the Prospex X automatic and Divers 200 meter at 6. The Divers 200 meter is gold to complement the gold second hand. Despite the fancy pattern of the dial, this watch is ultra legible. The minute and hour hands are classic Seiko. These are flat and also use a brushed finish. Now, the minute hand could stand to be a touch longer, but the arrow at the tip really helps when reading the time. The second hand is a gold color that really complements the green and also features a lumed lollipop counterbalance. And this is Seiko Lume, so there shouldn't be any surprises here. It's very responsive, bright, and long-lasting. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. You can see it doesn't wear as big as you might suspect. This is one of Seiko's cases that's really magical in the way that it kind of wears smaller than it looks, and it's incredibly comfortable. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, we have long clamored for a sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel in these more entry-level Seiko divers, and we finally have that in the King Samurai and the King Turtle. If these specs are important to you, I think you're getting them at a good price from a storied brand. Obviously, you can get these specs way cheaper from micro brands, but if you prefer that link to history, then the Seiko is a good choice. The main positives on this watch for me is first and foremost the incredible comfort of the case. Second, the knurling on the bezel is really cool and incredibly easy to grip. Finally, the dial is really nicely executed, and the lume is incredibly responsive, bright, and long-lasting. As for cons, I'm not a fan of the candy bar Cyclops because I don't feel the magnification is strong enough to justify it. Second, I know this is silly, but I'm sad Seiko stopped signing most of their crowns at this price point. It is such a small difference that doesn't really add any functionality, but I enjoy those small details. Finally, you have to gamble on getting an aligned bezel and Cyclops and then an accurate movement, and these are just part of Seiko's ongoing QC issues. As for comparables, you could consider a plethora of other Seiko divers, especially the King Samurai for about the same price point. I can't help but always mention Steinhardt at this price point, and they even have a 44mm version of their diver if you like this larger size. For a bit less, you could get the Citizen ProMaster, but you lose the sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel. Finally, check out the updated Orient Triton. While I prefer the older version, the new one is still a good option. So there you have it, the King Turtle. What do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.